Bach Among Us is a collaborative project that brings together music and dance in an unconventional setting where the performers and audience are together on stage to create a warm and inclusive concert experience.
Helena was new to Bard. She had just sort of landed at Bard as an artist fellow in residency for a year, and she was looking for a project to do, and I was looking for a project to do just because I was hungry to create something of my own. And I had been talking with my piano teacher about working with Bach and choreography, and she started talking about wanting to do a recital of Bach, and perhaps even with dancers, and it took off from there, and it just grew and grew every week.
I originally said, why don't you come to me with a proposal, thinking it was going to be just a basic sense of scope, you know? And she came with this very considered response to the score, which is about the canons, and the intervals move further and further apart. And I thought, that's such a lovely image. Let's work with that. And we can just deal with this idea of what does it mean for two people to move further apart or closer together. And how do we keep playing with presence to show when are we really together with one another? When are we in close proximity, but we're in our own worlds? And then there was this idea of reversing the stage and utilizing this beautiful expanse of the Saksnaf.
I was interested from the very beginning in choreographing more of a kind of literal translation of music as opposed to some kind of emotional response to music.
Oh, okay.
Well, there's like... The fact that the audience was so close was a challenge because being in the front row meant that one sort of distant perspective of an entire spectacle was removed. And what would have been a kind of, you know, flat portrait of three dancers became one dancer here and then turning one's head to see the other dancers. And that's a very different experience than being able to see a whole array, all of the choreography at a distance.
We did one rehearsal and we realized a few things. One was that it is very hard to compete with Bach. You can't actually compete, you're going to lose. And any movement we did felt very extraneous, felt completely inessential, felt naive, felt amateurish, felt like you can't do this with Bach. You can't, you will lose. The only thing that felt appropriate to do when we went back to the drawing board was to almost guide people through a visual that would cue them about what this experience was to listen to the music.
It's such a risk to strip away all the tools you have, all this technique that she's learned, the virtuosic movements. Just walk across the stage and move an audience. It takes courage, and she took that step.
We're really removing everything that we in our past have executed, but some could argue like something that we've hidden behind. So in removing all of that, what's left? How am I going to deal with that as a performer? How are you going to deal with that as an audience member? And how are you going to solve the problem of adding a performance element to this piece of music? And our response was really to not add a lot to it.
I think this music always needs to be revitalized in some way, but either by another kind of interpretation on modern instruments, on a new combination of instruments. Bach himself borrowed from his own compositions and reorchestrated them for other instruments in his day. So here we are kind of borrowing the Goldberg Variations. It's the only way that we get to play this stupendous piece. So, and including the dancers also makes the piece more approachable for a broader audience, and I think that Bard is a great place for that.
I chose to present Bach in this new way because I was interested in the questions it raises about use of performance space, audience dynamic, and the ways in which students and faculty across different disciplines undertake a creative process.
And it's interesting for us as musicians to see how people from different artistic mediums respond to something like Bach.
Before I met Helena, I had become interested in choreographing to Bach's music, partly as an attempt to reconcile my interests in classical music and modern dance. I think that some of the pieces were far more on the classical side than on the modern side. But it did make me question for myself, you know, what does it mean to create modern dance to classical music? And how much is it still modern dance? And is it only modern dance because they're flexing their feet and sticking out their tongues? Or is it modern dance because of an intention, because of a musical intention, because of an artistic intention? And these were all questions that arose out of the process, and I cannot say that I have answers for them.
There's something very interior and feeling very private, maybe. But it's a moment where I feel like people's imaginations kind of grow. There's something that Bach does over that arc. It's very much about the very simple things in life. There's something so pure he's dealing with that it underscores a purity to life. And so we thought, that's kind of what our palette has to be, is that simple and that essential. It's been a very interesting choreographic tutelage.
I began to interpret the music as well as try to be as steadfast as possible in translating it literally, which was liberating and was encouraged by many of the dance teachers that were watching my process.
We learned from this project that it's possible to create an intimate atmosphere in an enormous space and to create the same intimate communication that you might have between two people in conversation.
It's been very frightening because it's like it's taking away all of the things that as a dancer you feel like, or as a choreographer, you should be doing. We've gotten more out of this project than we ever thought we would have in like complete ways that we never anticipated, you know?